Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jay Lenora Bressler, and welcome to the Thursday, April 16, 2020 edition of The Bible Delight in the Details. We are looking now at some of the post-resurrection sightings of Christ. As we talked about yesterday, Jesus appeared to well over 500 people at various times in various locations over a 40-day period. We talked yesterday about the importance of it being 40 days and the fact that that was a preparation. It was a time of preparation time for them to begin their ministry as the church. I want us to look at one of those specific instances where Jesus appeared to some of the folks. And this is actually so packed with significance that we're probably going to take 2, maybe even 3 days to look at it. It is in John chapter 21, and I'm just going to read the first part of it, and we'll talk about that and leave some other things for another day. Afterward, Jesus appeared again to the disciples by the Sea of Galilee. It happened this way. Simon Peter, Thomas, also known as Didymus, which means twin, by the way, Nathanael from Canaan in Galilee, the sons of Zebedee, that would be John and James, and 2 other disciples were together. I'm going out to fish, Simon Peter told them, and they said, we'll go with you. So they went and got into the boat, but that night they caught nothing. Early in the morning, Jesus stood on the shore, but the disciples did not realize that it was Jesus. And he called out to them, friends, haven't you any fish? No, they answered. He said, throw your net on the right side of the boat, and you will find some. And when they did, they were unable to haul the net in because of the large number of fish. And then the disciple whom Jesus loved, that was John, said to Peter, it is the Lord. And as soon as Simon Peter heard him say, it is the Lord, he wrapped his outer garment around him, for he had taken it off, and jumped into the water. And the other disciples followed in the boat, towing the net full of fish, for they were not far from shore, about 100 yards. And when they landed, they saw a fire of burning coals there, with fish on it, and some bread. Now, we're going to leave what Jesus said to them for another day, but there's several things about this. First of all, as I was studying this passage, I did some research about fishing in the Sea of Galilee, and I found out some fascinating things, which I'll bring to your attention on other days. But just a couple interesting things about that. There were apparently 4 ways of fishing in the Galilee at that time, and many of the same today. The Sea of Galilee has 18 different indigenous fish, 10 of which are commercially fished. And by the way, in case you're wondering, the most common is tilapia, also known as St. Peter's fish. And the Catholic Church says that that is the main fish that Jesus would have eaten, was the tilapia. I had to share that immediately with Tristan, since that's his favorite, one of his very favorite foods, and definitely his favorite fish. And he said, well, of course, Mom, I'm a godly kind of guy. Something that's interesting is all these 4 ways that you fish in the Sea of Galilee, they're actually alluded to in the Bible, in different gospel stories. So this whole idea of fishing was, it was the way of life. It was life and death, literally. This was their business of most of the disciples, as you know. And so Jesus would have been in and out of their boats all the time, as the Gospels reflect that he was. And another thing that's sort of interesting is that the boats that they would have used probably didn't look exactly like you might be picturing. I think a lot of us think of them as a little bit oversized canoes, but they actually and we have we have boats from that time, archaeological remains of them that have been dug up, have been rescued from the bottom of the Sea of Galilee. So we're pretty sure we know about these boats, but they were they would they came together at a point on both ends, but in the middle there was kind of like a lean-to cabin. And so when Jesus was sleeping during the storm, and he would have been in this little lean-to with his head resting on a little foot-long leather thing that was known as the pillow. But that's just all kind of interesting. What I really want to get to, I get sidetracked because I just find all this fascinating. But what I wanted to get to is this, that we're told details about this. And, I've told you many times, whenever the Bible is very detailed, you need to pay attention because that means there's something significant here. We're told that Simon Peter, he wants to go out, and so some of the boys decide to go with him. There's 7 of them. And they go out at night, and they fish all night, and they don't find any fish. And then as the dawn is breaking, it says early in the morning, they see this man. They don't recognize him initially as Jesus, but it's early in the morning. We know that. And he's calling out to them, didn't you find any fish? Well, so interestingly, one of the 3 ways, the only way that you fish not from the shore on the Sea of Galilee, is you would go out, again, not terribly far away from the shore, but there would be shoals, and you would generally think that you would know where the fish should be. So you would go out, you would lower these nets, and there were different nets used for different types and all. But anyway, so these experienced fishermen should have known exactly where to cast the net. And you always did this, if you were going to fish that way, at night. Because I found out that the way they did this is they would literally take rags that had been soaked in oil and set them aflame on the bow of the boat. And then they would take things that would make a lot of noise, and they would bang the stuff. They were trying to make a lot of noise and light. And they were literally trying to scare the fish, to get the fish to get disorganized, I guess, and get into these nets, which then they could haul aboard. So that's why you did it at night, is because of the light would attract the fish and would disorient them and all kind of things. So anyway, these experienced people, they were doing it the right way. They should have gotten a mess of fish. Now it's the day. So the time for fishing, they would have thought, was over. So they were going to come back in with nothing. They'd given up, right? And that's when Jesus said to them, you need to go back out to the deep and cast on the other side. Now, this was kind of strange because for experienced fishermen, they'd had a bad night, okay? They certainly knew what they were doing. And some stranger that they did not recognize is telling them what to do, and they did it. So there was something, even before they knew that this was the Lord, there was something about his demeanor and his tone of voice, something that was commanding and authoritative enough that Jesus said that the disciples went along with this and did something that probably seemed very crazy to them. Because again, if they should have been, they knew they were fishing in the right place. And yet they did it. And that's absolutely fascinating. Now, of course, it's that Jesus knew where the fish would be, right? He knew exactly where. And he wanted them to recognize that they needed to be guided, not just by their own expertise, which was, in this case, would have been extensive, or their own experience even, but by the command, the authoritative guidance of somebody else, namely him, of course. Now, the other thing that is interesting here, which we're going to talk about tomorrow, is this business about Peter's reaction. When John recognized that was Jesus on the bank, what exactly did Peter do? And why is that so important? And what is it that we're supposed to remember when we see and hear what Peter did on this occasion. So join me tomorrow and the next day for more on the significance of this after the resurrection appearance of Jesus with Peter and the disciples and the boat and the fish. We'll talk about that much more tomorrow and in coming days. I'm Lenora Bressler, hoping you're having a good day. Visit me again on the next The Bible, Delight in the Details.